Well, good morning and welcome back. It's now April 25th and it's a beautiful but starting to get a little bit breezy morning out here by Barron's, Alberta. Just checking out the seed row here. This barley was seeded on April 8th and you can see it is germinating pretty good now. We got some roots coming. This guy is just starting to put out a coleoptile on the top there. So all in all, it is farther advanced than it was last week, but still pretty sadly advanced for a crop that was basically planted, coming on 3 weeks ago now. So we have had a few days of nice sunny weather here now, but the soil temperature at 2 inches is still pretty cold. I don't have my thermometer on me here at the moment, but I bet you it's still probably not quite 5 degrees down there. But we are seeing some progress, so hopefully with the warmer weather forecast this week, we should start to see considerably more growth towards the end of the week. Well, of course, one of the disadvantages of seeding early is what happens to your seed treatment. For example, this barley here is treated with Cruiser Vibrance Quattro, which has both a fungicide and an insecticide portion on it, which is good for roughly a month after the date of seeding. So once it goes into the soil, that clock starts ticking. So right now, this barley is barely germinated, and it is, somewhere between half and 3/4 of that seed treatment is basically already used up. In soil this cold, wireworms have really only just barely started feeding, so a lot of that insecticide portion basically is almost wasted. And you've only got, maybe another week or two of effective disease prevention. Now, in comparison, this barley here has just been seeded today. Seed drill is just over there at the moment here. So this is going into soil, which is about 2 degrees Celsius. So if there's enough moisture in the seed row here, which I think there is for it to germinate, this will probably start germinating in just a couple days and really might emerge only a few days behind stuff that was seeded 3 weeks ago, and will still have basically its full month of seed protection. Seems like every time I see the winter wheat, it's doing better and better and better, greening up like crazy. You can see this is just one plant here. You can see how many tillers there is on this. It's just going absolutely gangbusters. Pretty sure this here would be the main stem, and we're sitting at about the 3-leaf stage on there. So that is looking pretty good. Well, here's some peas that were some of the first ones seeded. So they've been in the ground for, 2.5-ish weeks. Compared to last week, it doesn't seem like there's a whole lot of growth. We're germinated, we got tails on them, but they're not really reaching for the sky yet. They're still a ways away from emergence. So overall, soil temperature here has still been cold enough. These just have not progressed much last week at all. I think I just found something lucky out here today. Nice. Well, it's too windy to send the drone up, but there is some power hilling going on in potato country today. So for those of you that aren't familiar with potatoes, this is the process here. So this is basically once power hilled and fertilizer has been broadcast on there, and then they run the power hiller over it again. It gets it in nice condition, incorporates that fertilizer, helps protect it from the elements until seeding can occur. Well, now that we've had some warm days, you can see a few of these weeds like this flicksweed here are getting big pretty fast. This guy now is 8-ish inches wide, so he's going to be growing by the day now. Here's his neighbor over here, which is probably even a little bit bigger. This guy here is probably 6 to 8 inches. Here's a whitlow grass down here, and this guy actually does have the little yellow whitlow flowers on him. Well, the fall rye this week is looking absolutely great. It's really starting to green up quick now that the weather's getting warmer. You can see some damage on it here and there from the weather over the last couple of weeks. There's a few scorched leaf tips, but overall pretty good. And we're getting very close to herbicide timing in a lot of these winter cereals now. We're getting to 3, sometimes 4 leaf on a lot of these guys. And because it's so dry, there hasn't been a whole lot of really small weeds, but there is, flicksweed, some of these winter annuals in here, some of these guys, a few of them are starting to get fairly big. There's some sow thistle here that's just coming through. But there is, of course, the usual patches of spring dandelions. Oh, for winter cereals, some of my favorite herbicides is the Enforcer series from New Farm, either M or D, depending what you're spraying it on and what your target species is. Because this is fall rye, we're going to use Enforcer M. That should do a really good job taking out those winter annuals. Here in this barley stubble, you can really see this green patch from quite a ways away, and it's a pretty good sized one. And this is all quackgrass, so when you dig this guy up, it is all full of these underground rhizomes. And yeah, it's kind of a nasty weed to deal with once it gets established like this. Your best bet, of course, is to hit it with glyphosate in the fall, but in the spring before tillage or seeding is another good time to get her done as well. Once you drag a tillage tool through here, you basically just end up cutting off and spreading these rhizomes all around the field, and then you get all these little isolated pockets popping up here and there. Well, these peas down by McGrath are definitely still growing and still healthy, but they are pretty slow getting going. These have been in the ground for a couple weeks now, and there's still like no hypocaudal extension on these guys yet. But hopefully in a matter of days here at this temperature, we should start to see some sort of emergence towards the surface. Well, right here by Welling in this field that's going to be going into canola, there is some greening going up in here. And when you take a look at it and dig it up, it is wild oats. So these guys are just come up. They're just one leaf, which means they're going to be damn near impossible to hit with a spray droplet. So we'll have to let them get just a little bit bigger, but it'll be a good opportunity to take out that first flush of wild oats with a pre-seed burn off. Well, here today we have one brave man seeding canola at about 3/4 of an inch. This is into a dryland field, and you can see the seed row is dry as can be. Moisture layer is about 1.5 inches deep in this particular spot, so it's not going into a whole lot of moisture. Placement is looking pretty good. I do not really recommend seeding much deeper than this. The canola just has too difficult of a time emerging through it, and I can probably explain all that easier on an animation. Well, if you were expecting computer animation, I am sad to say I don't know how to do that, but for the sake of this, we'll do it on paper here. So let's say this is your soil surface right here, and this is the moisture layer, which would be about 1 3/4 to 2 inches underground right now. So ideally, you're going to be planting about 10 seeds per square foot, because canola generally has about a 30% mortality rate, and you want to be left over with 6 to 7 seeds per square foot. So you're going to want to be seeding about in that 3/4 to 1 inch depth zone. So that's going to be, you know, something along these lines kind of deal. And if you're seeding with a precision planter, that's what it should look like. If you're seeding with an air seeder, you're probably going to have a couple high ones and some low ones, and probably 3 right together and all that kind of stuff. Now, what the risk right now is that if we were to get, like, because we're all seeding into really dry soil, especially in this Nobleford Barrens, Carmingay kind of area, if we were to get a light shower rain, you know, 1/10, 2/10, couple mils kind of thing, what happens is that upper surface kind of will get wet, but it won't penetrate all that deep. So we probably won't hit all the seed in the seed row. And these shallower ones will be susceptible to germinate as soon as they get that moisture, because the soil is getting to be pretty warm. So these guys, the danger with them is if they germinate, and basically that root will extend down, and it'll hit dry clay underneath the seed row, and it's not going to want to penetrate through that. It's hard and it's dry. So instead, it's going to try to follow that moisture layer right through the seed row. And once that moisture disappears, because it's going to be moving upwards if we're hot and windy, now that guy is basically going to die. He's going to desiccate, dry out, and you'll probably never even see him reach the surface. These ones that are really shallow will be really susceptible to that. You know, any of these ones that are right near the surface, within 1/4 inch of the surface, will have a really high mortality rate if they cannot get the root down into that moisture before they run out. If we're seeded at 3/4 to 1 inch, we might still be dry, but we would be safer in the case of a small light shower. And if we did get a shower of, say, 1/2 inch or more, ideally what we want is that moisture layer to come all the way down, meet up with our subsurface moisture at 1.5, 2 inches depth. And basically, then our seed can germinate, come up to the surface, perfectly fine there, comes down into the moisture layer, branches out, and we are golden. So right now, the option is basically seed into dry and hope that that is what happens, or we wait and see what's in the forecast and we seed ahead of a good rain. All right, well, last week's weed of the week was yarrow. So this weed is actually edible, has a couple different medicinal purposes, and is pretty much a native rangeland weed. Kind of a funny looking thing. Don't see it too terribly often. Well, it's turned into a beautiful Friday afternoon out here, where it looks like it's at least going to try to threaten us with some showers, although I don't think it's going to amount to really anything at all. So we will see you next week, when I probably continue to complain about the lack of moisture.